Thank you for staying with us. You're still watching The Breakfast on Plus TV Africa. It's time to discuss the Agenda 2025. Today, we take a closer look at the policies that shaped Nigeria in 2024, their successes, shortcomings, and the impacts they've had on the lives of everyday Nigerians. From economic reforms to education and healthcare, we'll assess how these policies influenced national development over the past year. Looking ahead to 2025, which we are in now, we'll explore the outlook for Nigeria, the policy priorities that could drive progress, and what Nigerians can expect in 2025. Joining us for this critical conversation are experts who will provide insights and perspectives on building a stronger and more prosperous nation. And joining me this morning is Effiong Nyong. He's a former Cross River Governorship candidate. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Great to be here.
Lovely to have you.
Yeah.
All right, so we're talking about all of the policies that have shaped Nigeria in the past year. And I know we would like to circle back even to when this present administration took office, which was May 29, 2023. But we're here in 2025, and there's a lot that has happened as a nation. There's a lot that we've had to deal with as a nation, from petrol subsidy being gone. So, of course, petrol tariff hike, petrol price hike, electricity tariff as well. In fact, now we're looking at about 50% tariff hike in the telecom sector as well. But for you, what is your general assessment of what 2024 was like for Nigerians?
Hardship, pain, suffering. Those were the indices or the indicators that characterized 2024. And 2024 is one year that Nigerians would not want to remember. They wished it just went by. And but here we are, 2025, still feeling the reverberations, the ripple effect of what happened in 2024. Yes, from you can go back a bit to May 29, 2023, with that, would I say famous or infamous statement. Subsidy gone. And the hardship started just that day, and it's not gone back. I mean, there's no palliative anywhere in terms of real ameliorating the sufferings of Nigerians. So it's been quite harsh. Not just did we have the price hike in petroleum, there was also this several hikes in the customs tariff, clearance of goods. There was the floating of the naira, affecting the exchange rate. There was also the case of the cost of funds, the central bank rate at lending, the cost of lending, 28.75% to the cost of funds, meaning that having money or capital to do any business, if you have to go borrowing, you are not going to get any funds for less than 30%. So all of that created so much difficulty and hardship for Nigerians in the outgone year. And here we are in 2025, and the welcome message is that telecommunications tariff is going to go up by 50%. Not very pleasant.
So, of course...
and of course, the tax reforms.
Yes,
tax reform bill, yes.
Yes, I was just about to, segue there. When the president, addressed the nation, one of the things he said was, we have to make sacrifices. We need to tighten up our belts, which Nigerians have been doing. But in your opinion, what are some successes, maybe? Because we're looking at tax reforms, we're looking at several things. I was just talking about how there would be free cesarean operations for women as well. So what are the successes or failures that you think 2024 brought, and the lessons that we need to learn from it going into 2025?
I wish I can place my finger and begin to tick the good things. But there's something I learned from Mr. President. He did say Nigerians were learning how to manage. That he has a friend who has about 5 Rolls-Royce limos.
Very cool.
And the man now drives around in a car that is a bit more fuel efficient. So the president said. And maybe if we look at it from whatever perspective, you might say, yes, people are learning how to manage. People are learning how to eat once a day. They used to eat twice. People are learning how to not to go change their wardrobes the way they would want. People are learning so many things the very difficult way. School fees are not smiling. Medical fees are not smiling. Cost of analgesics, the very small, the kind of across-the-counter purchases that normally you would make, people now go researching into what herbal medications will do, what to mix with water and all that. So the lessons are quite enormous, talking about learning. But looking at it in real terms, the human angle to it in a modern society, not plenty things you want to talk about. Maybe those that are learning very well are the politicians, learning so many things, learning how to go around to cut deals, to learning how to be loyal, learning how to be to bootlick afresh, learning so many things on the other side. And so if you look at it from those perspectives, then you might say that some persons are getting to learn some new things. But in terms of real life, I think the average quality, standard of living has really, really dropped. I mean, mortality rates, if you go to the hospitals, you can check. You know, you check the mortality rate of women, talking about cesarean sections, getting free access. But you need to ask yourself how many people get access to even obtaining the card before getting to the point at which they are going to be offered the CS. I mean, common sickness in Nigeria, malaria is number one. And so the number of persons that get malaria, get to deal with the malarial parasite, and the number of persons that get to take concoctions here and there, the number of people are coming down with kidney issues and all that because they cannot have access to proper Medicare. So many things are not just okay. I mean, I don't want to sit here and be sounding negative, but we definitely know it's not okay. But of course, that's not on the scorecard of government, because for whatever government has been telling us up until this morning, going through the news, you hear that the economy is improving, things are getting better, they're stabilizing the economy. But when you finish listening to all of that, you now go back to yourself and ask yourself, how does it feel? Is it true? It's as if some persons are living in a different world and the masses are living in a different world. Then, of course, the contradiction largely again is in the lifestyle of those that are ruling, the ruling class. Their lifestyle, the ostentatious living, the way they carry on. It doesn't even
reflect what the common man is going through. In any manner.
So there's a whole lot of contradiction in the system.
So, I mean, you even speaking about the healthcare, right, and how people cannot even afford the basic drugs that they need. Because there was a report last year that said most people were turning into herbal medication, of which they're dangerous to that because you don't even know what you're taking into your system, ingesting. I know that they're trying their best, but I'm not sure if the best is good enough right now. But how would you say they've addressed, the economic instability? Of course, on the papers today, it says President Tinubu, according to Wale Ejun, said President Tinubu obviously is working and reducing poverty, the economic instability and all of that. But how would you say they've been able to do that? When you think of inflation, when you think of unemployment in the country, how has the economy been in 2024?
It's been difficult. The economy has not fared well at all. And when they say they're stabilizing the economy, you begin to wonder in what direction. Now, this is not the first time that government is reaping so much money, so much bounty in terms of resources, in terms of funds from fuel hike. I recall that during the Abacha regime, there was this case of the petrol being, I can't remember the particular words now, but some trust fund was created, the Petroleum Trust Fund was created. Former President Muhammadu Buhari was brought in as chairman, and the funds, the fallouts, the windfall from that effort was used in creating massive infrastructure. We saw a lot of health, massive health importation. So much happened that people are able to look back and say, this is what Abacha did. Now, from this government, the last time journalists were querying Wale Ejun, the finance minister, so, wow, these monies that we are making from this subsidy, how is government deploying it? How much money is it? The next session was that the minister, they had to now see journalists out of that session for them to go into a closer discussion. People don't know. All we hear is that so much money is being disbursed to state governments to disburse.
But there's no transparency.
No transparency in any form. You don't know how much, you don't know how this money has been deployed, but you hear that monies going around, and these monies are going to individuals, party members. But of course, we are Nigerians. We all cannot be in the same party.
True.
And even if we're in the same party, we may not be in the same clique, because it's about cliquism and interest. So if you're not in the same interest groups with these fellows, then you don't get any benefits. But again, one would have thought that at this stage, we should be able to say, okay, this is how much we are saving from the withdrawal from fuel subsidy withdrawal, and this is how we're deploying it to health, we're deploying it to education. If Nigerians are complaining, what are they complaining about? Food, what are we doing about food security? What are we doing about housing? What are we doing about education? Because these are places where, these are the areas where families deploy money. Now, if you leave the federal government, you go back to the states. State governments are passing laws to hold more resources. State governments are passing laws to take charge of local government administration. Local government fund, federal government says in one breath, we are the Attorney General, kudos to him, went to the Supreme Court and got judgment that they were going to be sending money to the local government directly. Now, that's in one breath. On the other hand, the president tells the governors in a meeting that the governors were going to be taking charge of their states, that the local governments belong to them. Contradictory. Then in Cross River State, for instance, the Cross River State government has gone to an executive bill from the governor of Cross River State is to say that local government can appoint more people. We're now going to be having essay this, essay that. Now, politicizing the local government, destroying the local government through legislation and implementation, rather than use the local government for development and of infrastructure, use the local government for affecting and impacting on people, but they've taken the politics to the local government, and I think that's a clear signal that destruction is going down to the grassroots, to the third tier of government, and it's not supposed to be. So these are the indices, these are the things we feel from the local government to the presidency, to the state and the presidency.
I love the fact that you just touched on development, like infrastructural development. But I think one other thing that is pertinent to talk about in 2024 is security. We saw how insecurity ravaged the country. We're talking about kidnappings, terrorism, so much. And it's funny how security takes a huge chunk of our budget, but yet I'm not sure if we did so well. But in your opinion, how did you think we fared in 2024, maybe compared to previous years? Do you think we're moving a step in the right direction where we're fighting insecurity head on?
Well, I do not think so. It's really sad that on every score, on every topic, on every subhead, one will score this government low. Because if we were to tackle insecurity, one would have said, okay, how much jobs have we created to engage young people?
Yes.
How are we engaging young people out of school? How much graduate employment are we having? Now, the local government administration has been paralyzed across the country. State governments have taken charge. They are not allowing that tier of government to function. Now, if government is to tackle insecurity, one would expect that government will insist that local government administration functions so people can get jobs. If you go to most local governments outside Lagos, most local governments, you just find the building and the councillors and the chairman, they go there at weekends to share money and they'll just go. It never used to be so. Local governments were very, very vibrant. We had contractors who were working for different local governments across the country who didn't have to go to the state capital to look for anything. But today, for you to do any business, you must see the state governor. You must be, the state governor must approve. We're running, in fact, what we are running today in Nigeria cannot be described as a civilian government. It's democracy on paper, but in practical terms, this is worse than what we experienced during the military regimes. Because, I just give you an example of what's happened during the Abacha era. How that government, even when Nigeria was a pariah state, where most countries across the world couldn't deal with refused to deal with the government at the time, but the Naira was stable. Naira was stable, jobs were created, the PTF opened up Nigeria massively, roads were constructed, contractors were paid, so much happened during that era. Now we are supposed to be a free nation, and the big problem we have in 2024 is that our governments at the state level and at the federal government are not listening. They are not listening, they are not taking advice, you can't talk to them. When you raise issues, you are labeled an enemy of government. When you raise issues, you must be against them. They don't want to listen to the other side. And they do not know it all. Now, if we look at Nigeria, for instance, we go back 2 regimes behind us. Let's look at the Jonathan regime. We had Okonjo Iweala, we had Aruma Ote, we had Eze Kwesili, we had Segun Aganga, we had Akumi Additional. We had top-class A-grade brains, all Nigerians. The moment that government was blackmailed into exiting office, all of these brains were snapped up by world-class organizations. And we have replaced them with it's like playing a football match. You remove your A team and you bring people that will not even qualify for your academy team to come and run your team. They definitely will run it aground. And that's what we're experiencing. What we see in Nigeria today is huge incompetence, lack of capacity with arrogance. When people are arrogant and they're incompetent and they're exhibiting all of that with with free-flowing gowns, reminding you of what the Sadducees and Pharisees in the Bible, you just wonder what they're thinking. Honestly. We know them and they know us. And they know they don't know, and we know that they don't know. But they will never agree because of arrogance, empty arrogance.
Yeah, because at this point, you wonder all of the policies that have, taken flight in the past few years or in the past 1.5 years. And sometimes you're like, did they really consult the right people? Did they really consult transformational people? Did they really consult the best brains to say, what do we do? Because it's important that for every policy, the stakeholders are in it with you, and then they can advise you on where to go and how to go about it. But sadly, we're here right now. But another question I'm going to ask, because I think everything starts from here, is corruption. Corruption in Nigeria has taken its toll. And like you were talking about, there is no transparency. But aside transparency, there's also no accountability. For instance, we don't know how much crude oil we get every day, or how many we produce every day, how many millions of barrels we get. We don't know how much it's being sold for. There are reports that, our crude has been mortgaged for times to come. We don't know what the NNPCL is doing. We don't know what the fuel subsidy was, because they said there was a cabal. We don't know what the electricity subsidy is, because they say they're paying electricity subsidy. We don't know the monies that were gotten from the subsidy for fuel. We don't know what they're being used for. So, of course, corruption is a huge factor. How do you think that the government have been able to address this so far?
Well, if the government is addressing corruption, we'll probably just read it on the pages of newspaper and on the social media, how the EFCC and DSS are hunting down people left, right, and center. That's all we see. But the other thing, what we now feel, is a different thing altogether. Because if government is to sincerely be talking about corruption, government will not be telling us one thing and be doing another. The government tells us this is going to happen, what we see is another. The government will not will come up with a tax reform bill and not consult with anybody, not meet with stakeholders, not even governors across the state were consulted. The government comes up with a tax reform bill. And now, this tax reform bill, people say, oh, it is good. Nigerian tax laws are obsolete. The last laws we had, tax laws we have are obsolete in the 70s and all of that. But what they are not telling us is, what are you taxing? For instance, there's so much talk about VAT. That VAT should be this, VAT should be, okay, fantastic, VAT should be this. Now, how equitable is the platform for the execution of a proper VAT regime? Registered head offices, registered corporate offices of most organizations are in Lagos. Like telecommunications companies, like oil companies, like financial institutions. But all of these activities are carried out across Nigeria. So how do you now say this is what is due to Cross River, this is what is due to Akwa Ibom State, with all of this in Lagos? And you now turn it around and you now change that the derivation, what should accrue due to derivation is 60% of the VAT. Meaning that you are taking 60% of all of this VAT, all of these services all of these costs that we all bear around the country, you are giving 60% to Lagos. How does that justify? How is that equitable? And now, while trying to understand this, I was in Calabar during December for a few days. In the course of while in Calabar, some senator had hired some boys, giving them money. They were playing some loud music and saying, tax reform bill, let us support. And the young man, they were just dancing and they don't know what they were dancing about. They were just dancing about tax reform that they don't understand. Even the governors and storm commissioners in government don't understand it. So it tells you that the moment a government operates in secrecy, the moment a government is not opening up for people to interrogate its ideas, that moment, that's the biggest corruption that can be going on. Then the next thing that happens when you want to identify a government that is corrupt is the moment you say one word, everybody is fighting you, everybody's on the defense. The next thing, the security agencies are called up to start to track you. Why would you say this? Why would you not say that? Because they cannot be queried. Because whatever they are doing is not correct. It's not true. They cannot be open. They can't be opened up to any kind of scrutiny, and that's what has led us to here. So corruption is huge. It is massive.
So looking ahead, I mean, we're in 2025 now, and of course, everybody wants better for Nigeria. As a citizen, you want to be able to afford the basic necessities of life. You want to ensure that, you know, there's proper development in your constituency, in your village, in your little community. You want to ensure that there's proper education for your kids, good healthcare system. What are some policies that you think we definitely need to be looking at better in 2025?
First, transportation. Now, the average citizen of Nigeria is paying ×3, about 300% more than what he or she was ever paying.
Or even more, yes.
Now, people that drink pure water, I used to know or hear that when people eat at such bukas, those local places, they are given free. Today, that sachet of one is sold for 50 naira. So, transportation is one major problem. People can't move their goods from the farmers can't move their goods. So government should ensure that it solves this issue about transportation. Now, government should should check it out and ensure that in 2025, the people should be removed from palliatives. Government is giving 75,000 naira to 50,000 households. We saw in the Buhari era why our vice president of all persons, a legal luminary, a professor of law, was in the market distributing money. They call it trader money. We should move away from the trader money mentality. Let's look at each other as human beings and treat ourselves as such. What are people paying for? People are paying for education. When we were growing up, the presidents, the sons of ministers and commissioners and governors were in school together.
Yes.
We're sitting in the same class in public schools. But today, our high up officers will will take our money here in Nigeria,
send their kids
abroad and go take photographs and send to us. Let government address the issue of public education. Bring back confidence in public education. Do transportation. Then housing is another problem. Let government address the issues of housing. Let housing be affordable. People can afford housing. Electricity, let government address it. Night economy in Nigeria across the country is dead. Because if there's light in the night, people will, the woman that sell akara under the lamppost at the junction, the woman that sell those petty traders, that economy has its own life. That economy today is dead because everywhere you go, there's a blackout. Insecurity is another matter. Food is not coming down south in Nigeria because there's so much insecurity everywhere around the country. People in the south, the economies of the south states, southeast and south is paralyzed. All of the markets in Lagos are doing Spamda, Ladipo, all of these, because the southeasterners cannot trade in their home state. And all of these pressures are coming to Lagos. Now, if government is also to deal with an issue, the port services in Nigeria is collapsing or it does not exist. How can we have ports in Calabar, ports in One, ports in Sapele, ports in Warri, and 98% of port services, all imports and exports in Nigeria are coming through Lagos. And all of the other ports are not working. They say they want to dredge, there's no stevedoring equipment or facilities across Nigeria. So if our government, the government should be sincere above all and should stop deceiving people. There's so much deceit in government in Nigeria at all levels.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you here and discussing this with you. I love your insights. There's so much that we can do as a nation. We're blessed. That's the honest truth. We're blessed, but it just seems as if our leaders are not doing the right thing, or maybe they're not consulting the right people. And hopefully, we can get to a place whereby we have a prosperous Nigeria, whereby they now listen to the citizens and say, how can we be better? What can we do better? Because in 2025, we want a better Nigeria for all. Effiong, we want to say thank you so much for coming. It's been a pleasure having you on our show. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we're speaking with Effiong Nyong, is a former Cross River governorship candidate, and we've just been looking at Agenda 2025 and how we can have a prosperous Nigeria this year. We'll go on a short break now. When we return, we'll be discussing your finances. So 2025 and your finances. Please stay with us.